Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy XI. I know, I said again, I was done with it, and I'll wait till the mobile game, yada yada yada. But for my 3-year partniversary, it was a heavily requested game. People were like, hey, you should play Final Fantasy XI as part of this event. And while at first I was a bit hesitant because, to be honest, the last few times I've tried playing it, I got really bored while playing it. I couldn't handle the number of archaic systems that the game has. I decided to do it. And so this video is going to be a more honest and honestly a bit more positive approach to how the game is standing right now in 2017. So I know your first question is private server or real server. So a lot of people think that it shut down permanently. I did make a video a while back saying that the game was, quote, ending. They said they weren't going to do any more story content after Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, but they still had monthly updates planned for the game for at least a year. We've gone past that initial year at this point where the monthly updates were planned for, and they are still updating the game every month. Sometimes minor, sometimes more major. There's just no new story content. So I made a brand new level 1 character on the Asura server, which is the official Reddit server, and the most populated server where you'll probably have the best time actually trying to find content nowadays, at least here in North America. While there are some other servers in both Japan and some secondary or middle level servers that do have a decent population, but not a super high one. So what did I do with this brand new character with nothing unlocked? I took it from level 1 to 99, got full I-119 gear because the game does have item levels now. I grinded out a few merit points. I finished Chains of Promethea, Rise of Xylart, Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, and made about a fifth to a third headway between Wings of the Goddess, Seekers of Adoulin, and Treasures of Aht-Urhgan. So I completed a bunch of story missions with my ultimate goal being to complete Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, which I'll let you know what I thought of it in this video. That's over about a 2.5-week period, so it gives you a rough idea of the time consumption for the early parts of the game. And to be honest, I did something slower deliberately because I wanted to show people these areas that, I had to pass through when I was younger and I played it back then. But it's really easy to get around now if you know the proper channels, so much so that I probably could have shed off a few days just on travel time alone. Now, I did get bored early on again. It was a bit of a struggle for me to get past some of the early levels, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. But like I said, I wanted to share my limited experience with you about the game's level cap and talk about how I honestly feel the content in Final Fantasy XI stands up today, especially when compared to 15 years ago, because the game did turn 15 this month. So first of all, let me just say this. A lot of things, if you grew up playing games in this generation, the game just looks boring and unappealing. It's just the bottom line. Just a lot of modern gamers aren't attracted to a game like this, which is why they don't re-release a game like this for anything other than mobile devices in 2017. It just hasn't aged well. It still holds true to its roots that it established 15 years ago. So old school players, about the only change you'll have to get used to in terms of the combat itself is you'll have some more actions, and the combat itself gets a lot faster, especially when you hit level 99. The game is also still as menu intensive as possible, which again is largely unappealing to modern audiences. Trust me, I streamed this and I had a lot of people who had never been exposed to the game before commenting on it, and I saw how, modern gamers were reacting to it versus the people in my chat who were familiar with it all those years ago. So again, even for me, someone who grew up with it, I still find the menus to be just obtrusive and completely obnoxious in some cases. But if you're an old schooler and you didn't mind it then, you won't mind it anymore now. Another thing that really felt lost, the community feeling. I always say that I never played Final Fantasy XI for its gameplay or its content. I played it for the story and for the community. And with the community aspect not really being there because of how easy it is to solo so much content, that explains why I got bored really early on with the leveling process, until I got to 99, and I was actually able to start running some content with other players, which was good. Since the introduction of trust NPCs, which are allies who take on the appearance of popular characters from the world, they fight alongside you. Like, I had Shantoto 2, for example, which was like a second version of her alter ego, as they're called. I had Naji, Tenzin. If you've played, you recognize a lot of the characters that you can get as trusts. And with those, most people just level with those trusts and forego playing with anybody else. You can party with both friends and trust simultaneously if you want to, so the option's not entirely gone. You're just never going to be searching for a party for X amount of hours. In some ways, it's good because it means you're never sitting around waiting for something to happen. You always have the ability to go out and get something done, which is a positive part that I'm going to talk about when talking about the end game at level 99, because that's one of those major changes that I think actually makes 11 feel a lot better nowadays than it did back then. I just want you to know I didn't really party up with a single other person though until the final fight in Rhapsodies of Vana'diel. Yes, that means I soloed all of COP even while I was leveling and all of Xylar, and I can solo all of the other storylines as well. One of the other annoyances, and again, all this comes down to like the leveling process and looking at some of the older stuff. Leveling speeds are absurd now, and I actually like it because it means that I can get through this and get to things like finishing all this content in 2.5 weeks before Stormblood comes out. That being said, it doesn't feel like they really expect new people to play the game, because you gain levels so fast that every 20 to 30 minutes, it felt like I had to run to like a bunch of NPCs and unlock like 5 or 6 features that the game has, whether that be a new job, whether that be breaking the level cap from 50 to 55 and then 55 to 60. You have to do all the level cap breaks all the way up to 99. And it's super annoying to do it, get 5 levels in like half an hour and then have to go do it again. You're just constantly being taken out of the gameplay and being asked to run around and talk to NPCs for hours on end. Honestly, I feel like it should be streamlined at this point. While it's nice for the nostalgia of needing to do these missions, some of them were made a lot easier, and some of them are just like not even interesting to do in the first place. So I think that's one thing they could look to streamline, but I don't know how many new players or even returning players they honestly expect to be getting at this point in the game's life cycle. And it does, again, feel good to level super fast, and gear's hardly even an issue all the way up to 99 because your trusts are so strong. This is another 50-51. Information and direction require extensive research, which is pretty much how the game has been for the past 15 years. There's so many systems that have been added on top of one another, and it gets taxing. I mean, you're super glad when it's done and you can use it and it feels good to have, but man, again, combined with how quickly you level, you just kind of wish you could go out and do stuff that isn't just talking to NPCs for hours on end, and this kind of just gets in there. And again, there's no direction in-game itself, so you always have like a second monitor and you're going through the Final Fantasy XI wiki and the BG wiki, just trying to get all the information that you can even have, and even then you're probably going to miss some. Now, I know a lot of that seems overly negative, and that's talking about, again, the leveling process, the place where I was most bored. But I'm kind of used to that nowadays in MMOs is what I've realized. You know, early leveling in most MMOs is not something that's super exciting. Everyone always says, oh, just wait till you hit endgame, and it's never a good excuse for a boring early game design. Final Fantasy XIV has been guilty of that for years now with the high GCD combined with the low number of skills that you have at early game. I mean, Final Fantasy XI didn't feel much better than that even. You know, it didn't feel any different. It didn't feel worse. It just felt like another situation where an MMO is not exciting early and then gets better later on. So I wish they would fix that in 11 because I think with how old the game is, they could definitely go back and make some adjustments with the way that engine works. But it was that. Let's talk about the stuff that's like after level 75 towards level 99 and getting caught up to modern stuff now. So old level 75 content is entirely done solo. I soloed all the content up to Alluvian Skirmishes, which is actually Seekers of Adolin content designed for item level 119. This actually is super useful because none of that content is necessarily not worth your time anymore. All the old currencies, like the Dynamis currencies, and Dynamis is way more accessible now. A lot of the old systems like Salvage and Assault, there's uses for going back and doing some of these things. The occasional one does need more than one person. A Nyzul Isle still needs 3 people to do it safely because of some of the floors that you can get, but it is nice to be able to go back to that old content, kind of reminisce on the nostalgia that you may have for said content, and still use it to somewhat, at least maybe earn some gil in the game right now, which is what most people will do Dynamis for nowadays, if they're not working on a relic weapon of their own. So, as for the actual modern day content for Final Fantasy XI, I'd personally say that once you've overcome the old content and the leveling and the not streamlined unlocking of the sub-jobs, actually sub-job unlocks have been made better, but the unlocking of the level caps and all the systems that you need to learn that are just completely redundant, if you can get through that early game, I honestly think Final Fantasy XI's endgame now is way better than it ever was back in the day. There's a large amount of content that can be done solo with trusts that will progress your character, and a good variety of high difficulty content for groups to participate in. Yes, actually play with other people, even though I've been talking about soloing this whole time. And all of it is all force spopped. I almost said force spopped. Force spawned or available on demand to some degree. Maybe you have to trade an item to an NPC or get some of a currency to unlock it, but you can always work on progressing your character. You're never sitting there waiting for 3 days to pass to do something. You're never sitting there waiting for 3 hours for a boss to spawn that maybe you won't even claim. You're never going to sit there for 4 hours and just kill the same enemy over and over again unless you really, really want to, which for things like for Ambuscade, you'll probably end up doing that, to be honest. So you're always progressing on your character in some reliable way, shape, and form, and there's a decent differentiation between the solo content and the group content. And the group content, honestly, the bosses and the way that you have to fight them nowadays, while they're still locked behind Final Fantasy XI's engine, so there's really not so much that they're capable of. They're way better designed than any of the bosses were back in the day. I mean, we're talking about what I feel is personally an improvement over even some of the more exciting bosses after Treasures of Aht are Gone, where their boss design started improving in the first place, and generally more exciting and time-accessible content. But don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of grinding at max level. It's not like the grind in Final Fantasy XI is gone. Job points were added as a system on top of merit points, which when you hit level 99 and kill enemies that are over level 100, they allow you to power up your job abilities. However, the main thing with job points is you also get stat bonuses and other perks. I think I used 5 job points and I got like attack plus 10 and capacity points plus 5%. And when I get to 10, I'll get like an accuracy bonus. And then every few job points I spend, I just get a permanent bonus for when I'm playing that job in particular. And these stat bonuses add up to become massive. So much so that players ask that their party members be a mastered status, which means 2,100 job points, they're 30,000 EXP, or I should say 30,000 capacity points per job point. And while you can get a lot of job points from some of the later stuff, like Apex monsters, when you group up and kill them old school style with skill chains, it is still a lot of grinding to master jobs in this game, and people consider it mandatory for a lot of content. I mean, this is also along the lines of, modern MMOs where people want you to have a minimum gear, or, you have to have beaten the fight before in order to access it. There's a lot of that mentality in Final Fantasy XI now. And to be honest, as someone who did endgame before, it was kind of like that before also anyway. So it's a different sort of demand, but the demand has always been there in Final Fantasy XI for endgame stuff. On top of that, endgame stuff requires a lot of accuracy, and unless you have a ton of gil, I recommend leveling Thief, by the way. Unless you have a ton of gil and you can buy certain things to get higher accuracy, or you can solo certain content as like Blue Mage or something like that, it creates a situation where you just don't have enough accuracy to do content. That's the bottom line. The item level doesn't even end up mattering. It's literally, how much accuracy do I have? Not enough? Get out. And that can cause a lot of problems and can be kind of a turnoff for people who want to hit max level and participate in the newer things and not just finish the old storylines. And of course, there's a community-enforced meta. It can't go full circle with adding item levels, adding vertical progression, still having the horizontal progression, and all the demands that come with both vertical and horizontal progression. And of course, there's a meta. So if you're not one of the jobs that's in the meta, some people don't care because you can beat it without following the meta, but people want to follow the meta. So statistically speaking, yeah, it happens a lot. It's everything you'd expect from a modern MMO. It sounds like a lot of bad, but having played Final Fantasy XI during what's considered its heydays or, its peak, I honestly can say I kind of prefer the current Final Fantasy XI over the old Final Fantasy XI, where the only reason I even had time to play that game is because I was in high school and my first couple of years in college, where it was like, I could sit around for 3 hours and wait for something to spawn because I was trying to get schoolwork done. Schoolwork is a lot different than, what I do now or what I would be doing now if I didn't do this. I'm not going to sit at my office for 8 hours and spend 3 hours sitting there waiting for an H&M to spawn while I'm trying to earn a living. You know what I mean? It was just a very, very different time for me. And I'm not going to spend all my time outside of the game or outside of that work also then playing the game. So I prefer the way that it is now, to be honest, and it's kind of refreshing to play the game at level 99 and see how they've kind of evolved it over all this time. Now, one final thing, Rhapsodies of Vana'diel. Now, this was the story that was considered Final Fantasy XI's finale. When I first made my RIP Final Fantasy XI video, they had just announced Rhapsodies of Vana'diel would be the finale of the game. It was the final storyline, and it was meant to tie together all of the storylines thus far. Now, I won't tell you what happened, and I've avoided showing any sort of cutscenes in the footage that I'm playing from my live stream here, but let me just say this is easily my favorite storyline, not just in Final Fantasy XI, but in any Final Fantasy game that's existed ever. It's got all the conflicts, it's got all the characters, it's got everything you really want out of a story, and it ties them all together in such a satisfying and honestly tear-inducing way towards the end. It is in every way the ultimate story, and I would highly recommend anybody, even if you've never played Final Fantasy XI before, you'll probably still enjoy the hell out of the story. And if you can get past all the archaic systems and not streamlined leveling in terms of all the quests you need to go out of your way and do, I'd recommend checking it out. If you're an old school Final Fantasy XI fan, once Stormblood kind of dies down a little bit, I think you could go back and maybe get that done. I think it was a great pleasure, and I am actually happy I went back and played Final Fantasy XI and gave it the due diligence that it deserved to get through Rhapsodies of Vana'diel and ultimately be more satisfied with any Final Fantasy story than I've ever been before. I can recommend it, and I hope you'll give it a shot at some point in the game's life cycle. But on that note, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Hopefully you didn't mind me rambling on about Final Fantasy XI, but ultimately, it was a pleasant experience going back. Better than I thought it would be. So anyway, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. At this point, we're a week out from Stormblood, so you know there's going to be a lot of videos in the coming week. Anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.